So he was quite sound in what he did, and it built this incredibly eccentric character that I loved. I mean, from all due respect to Sylvester and Tom, who are here today, but for me, Bill Hartnell was the Doctor and could never really be replaced. There have been different Doctors since who have been different, but they've never, for me, been the Doctor. Bill was it. Sorry, have I gone on too long?
That's perfectly all right.
I've never heard
You've got the
anything.
CDs. Don't forget there's 2 great books out there. I'll tell you my Bill story.
They're coming out on CD later.
What was your experience of working with him?
Well, you remember he was a child actor, and he was known as Billy Hartnell. And I was, I suppose, as bumptious then as I am now. First day's rehearsal, I bounded in. Hello, Billy. My name is Michael Shear. He didn't talk to me again for the whole production. Oh, I did put a black eye. I really did. Oh, God.
He did that with a lot of people. Going back to the Mythmakers, I remember Max Adrian coming up to me. Max Adrian played King Priam. Smashing performance. He was a lovely actor, Max. And he came up to me and he said, Peter, he said, I don't understand it. He said, I know Bill very well, but he won't speak to me. And that was it. And throughout, we rehearsed the series was a 4-week series. He never spoke to him once. I think he had to speak to him on screen a couple of times, but he never actually had a conversation with him. He didn't speak to him. Very strange man.
Yes, you'd like to ask a question?
Well... Okay, another thing you have in common, you've both worked with the Daleks. How was that?
I had to wait a long, long time. And we saw it just then. I finally got my chance. As a result of Grange Hill, funnily enough. Andrew Morgan ran me up. He said, look, he said, you're playing the assistant headmaster in Grange Hill who wants desperately to be headmaster. How would you like to come and play a headmaster for me and get zapped by the Daleks? And get kneed in the Ghoulies by a certain Miss Audrey. My dear, how is she, by the way?
Well, we've got a little video message from her. Some of them saw it earlier. We'll show it again after lunch. You want to watch?
Yeah. How's the baby?
It looks very well.
Oh, good, good. Because I told her to breathe deeply when we last met.
She looked well.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved working with the Daleks. We did a convention in Edinburgh. And foolishly, the organisers had put it on during the festival. So there were a lot of other distractions. There was a Dalek there. And we loved this bloody Dalek all over Edinburgh to drum up business. And a lot of Edinburgh is cobbled. Not an easy task. I'd rather have taken him.
No, you wouldn't.
His tail's still going. Are you there, Mr. Organiser of Horrible Dogs? No, he's not.
I can't actually believe that you really enjoyed working with the Daleks. I mean, they were totally time-consuming in the studio. And they were such a naff invention. I mean, as we've said many times, if they can't get upstairs, how are they going to cause any chaos anywhere? And they lumbered around, and it was I just hated them. But my very first appearance in Doctor Who, before I played the regular character in it, was in I can't remember what it was called. The Chase, was it?
Yes, the
Chase. And on the top of the Empire State Building, which the last time I was here 2 years ago at this particular convention, I saw it for the first time. I didn't see it go out, and I had never seen it since. And I saw it last 2 years ago for the very first time, and I thought it was quite funny. And wow, shit, it's one of them things again. And but I didn't really, apart from that one occasion, I didn't really enjoy working with them. The 2 serials that I did that involved them, I really thought were tedious in the extreme. And you know, Peter Hawkins, lovely fellow to use his voice, enough grate after a while.
Well, when I did mine, of course, they did go upstairs.
Did they?
And, yeah.
In lifts?
They did, didn't they? Yeah. And I sort of judge the popularity of the stories I did by the pennies that come, and I mean pennies, that come back from overseas sales. Now then, which of the stories I did do you reckon is the most popular?
Pyramids of Bath.
Absolutely right, Pyramids of Bath. But not far behind is my Dalek story. Perhaps because Sophie needs me in the Ghouls. But I'll tell you something else.
I think people are freeze framing it all the time. They got it better.
Play your cards now. Play your cards right, and I might be able to do you some good here. Who's heard my story about the Peter Cushing movies? Anybody? Okay. You remember the Peter Cushing movies? This is sort of hot off the press. 2 Dalek stories were made. 3 were optioned. And I had a call, 4 months ago now, I think, maybe a bit more, from an independent producer-director. And he said, I know this sounds mysterious, but I'd like to take you out to lunch. So, me being a Scot, I thought, right, free nosh, great. So off we went, and he said, look, that 3rd film was never made. I've got my lawyers working on it. I mean, it is a long shot. This is me talking now. Because the rights have been transferred and sold on, and people have died, and they may even have gone back to Auntie. But he said, if I can get the rights to that 3rd film, I would like you to play Doctor Who. So there may be a new Doctor Who in another Dalek movie.
Interesting.
So I might get, if you play your cards right, I'll get you in it. How's it?
Yeah. His oldest travelling companion ever.
Okay, Peter, you mentioned that you played the part of the American chap. I've forgotten his name, I'm sorry.
Martin Doyle.
That was the one. And then it was just a few weeks later you returned to play Stephen, a main character. What was that like? Was it a surprise?
Oh, total surprise, yeah. I mean, they just, after the recording, I mean, it was one of those things, it was just such a weird part. It's an absolute little cameo, and whether I was any good or not, it doesn't really matter. They thought I was on the day. And I think they were in a bit of a hole. They must have been, because to not have cast the replacement for 2 of the main characters within 2 weeks of needing to rehearse with them, I think was pretty short-sighted, really. And it wasn't a surprise. I think Bill and Russell and Jackie had been going to leave for, I think it had been known for some time, and they just hadn't got a replacement. And they came to me on the set after the recording, invited me for a drink, and over in Studio 3 at Riverside Studios, then Riverside Studios at the BBC, they sort of dropped the bombshell. They said, you know, if we asked you, would you be interested in coming and playing this permanently? Would I, you know? And I went, I think that was on a Friday when we finished the recording, and I went in to see them on the Monday, and I started work 2 weeks later. So it was, yeah, a total surprise. Well deserved, of course.
Wow, that's my line.
Oh, come on, I'm not as modest as you.
And as you said, Peter, you were replacing 2 major characters who'd been with the series from the start. Did you feel a sort of sense of responsibility for that?
Oh, yes. I mean, it was a big, really big leap up the career for me. I mean, I'd worked steadily as an actor for 10 years, and I'd done some television leads. I'd played a couple of plays, but I mean, you don't get them very often. And certainly, I think over a year, I'd done 2 major tellies. And so out of the blue, to get this and go on to play regularly for 44 episodes I did in the end. I mean, it was a marvellous hike up for me. Though it actually, in one way, it really killed my career stone dead, because I did that, and apart from doing a couple of BBC training exercises and a couple of episodes of Z-Cars, I didn't do any more acting. That was it. It was I came out of it. I was 18 months virtually out of work, and then they invited me to do Blue Peter. So my career changed at that point. I would have loved to have carried on acting. That was really my first love. It was what I wanted to do, and I took Blue Peter on for 6 months because I thought that was as far as I'd want to do it, and then acting work would come piling in again. It never happened that way, and I stayed I suppose, stuck in the presenting side. Interestingly, I was telling Michael earlier, I'm on the board of the Wolsey Theatre in Ipswich. I live in Suffolk now. And the Wolsey Theatre was closed under a cloud about 14 months ago, and I'm on the board now to reopen it. And that's, I mean, for me, that's a wonderfully exciting thing. But I've also just applied to run it, and we'll wait and see whether I get that. But that gets me back to my acting roots. That's particularly why I mention that, because television presentation is great fun, but it's not what I came into the business for. I came in because I like playing other people and
Yeah,
pretending.
but hang on a minute. You don't regret Doctor Who?
Not at all. Oh no.
Because it's funny how these things happen.
Look, everything happens for a reason, and it was a great job. Oh no, I don't regret anything I've done ever. It's a pointless thing to regret.
The phone rang one day, and it was a guy called Ben Reed, and he said, "I'm looking for a balding actor." And I said, "Well, I'm a balding actor." He said, "Yes, I know. That's why I'm ringing you." I've taken over as producer of Grange Hill, and the rest, as they say, is history. You did 44 episodes, I did 144 episodes of Grange Hill. And would not ever regret 1 minute of it. It's a funny old thing. You go through a career, and who knows, it may be Doctor Who, it may be First Frontier, which I'm just about to start, but you expect that the never-to-be-forgotten moments are going to be in some huge, great movie. For me, the never-to-be-forgotten moments, and there were, I mean, I'm brilliant, as you are, all the time, but there are certain moments that stick out, and there were 3 of them in Grange Hill that could, I say this with modesty, and it's not easy for me, they could not have been better. There was one scene with Ant Jones when he was late for class, and again, I say this with modesty, at the end of the take, everybody, it's just an argument obviously between he and I, and everybody, the crew and the director came down onto the floor and they all clapped, and it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling.
So the boy was really very good, was he?
Wow! We should do a retake on this actually. The boy was also very good.
No, I mean, one doesn't regret in the moments that one has. If you get your head above the crowd in our business at all, then you've done really well, because it's a hell of a difficult business. And if you do get your head above the rest, then well done to you and jolly good luck. I mean, you can feel proud of it, but it's luck to a large extent. It's not necessarily talent. In mine and Michael's case, of course.
Of course it is, yes, it's all talent. But it is actually that, and the first time I played him was in a film for the BBC called Road Mail, starring Peter O'Toole, who steadfastly refused to sit at the same table with me at lunch. Because he said, "Oh, he looks far too like the character." But no, I don't think so. I don't think so, really. I mean, it's called acting, you know. I mean, it's interesting, actually, on the Hitler thing. I'm often asked, what was it like to play Hitler? And my wife is Jewish, actually, and when I was first offered the part, I said to her, "What should I do?" She said, "Don't be a silly, go and play it." So I met her, put the atrocities in a cupboard, lock the door, and then you've got an interesting man to play. But
You must have been seen as a school teacher, though, for certainly a lot of kids will have seen you not as an actor. I mean, it does happen. You do get sort of typed into that role, whether you like it or not. I mean, you can fight your way out of it, but you get lots of...
Funny enough, I get lots of people coming up to me and saying, "Oh, I used to hate you as Mr. Bronson." I used to hate you as Mr. Bronson. Not I used to hate you as Michael Shear. There is a difference. But I've never had any hate mail. But, "Oh, I used to hate you." No, we had lots here. Oh, 6 of them.
Peter, were you saddened by what was in the Blue Peter time capsule? Maybe the water.
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Toby. Oh, all that. Well, it's a very interesting thing. You know, when we buried it, we didn't wrap it up in polythene bags and stuff. When we opened it, it was in polythene bags, and they had everything inside them sweated, and that's why they were all more or less destroyed. I thought it was the most ludicrous thing we ever did whilst I was in Blue Peter, to bury a time capsule that ideally was going to be reopened by the people who buried it. That defeated the object. The next thing that defeated the object of it was they rebuilt much of the television centre, so they had to move it. Well, they didn't. If it's a real time capsule, it should have stayed where it was and got taken into the foundations of the buildings that were built where it was buried. And at some time, many millennia forward, maybe it'll be discovered. Maybe. To me, that's what a time capsule is about. Though the condition of the things after just 30 years suggests that it wouldn't have been very interesting to open it with the smell to it. But that was about it. But no, I wasn't particularly saddened by it because I thought it was a daft idea in the first place. But having said that, I know that a lot of the audience thought it was great. And a lot of people had a genuine nostalgic wish to see it open because they saw it buried. Maybe you're one of those who saw it buried and said, "I want to," you know, it's a date that I'm looking forward to. I find that surprising that people did, but they did. But for me, it was really a non-starter anyway.
Next question.
Yeah, is it true they hated singing in the Gunfighters?
Is it true that I hated singing in the Gunfighters? Not really. I hated the song that I had to sing in the Gunfighters because it wasn't in my key. Actually, I was trained as a singer, and I wasn't. I shouldn't say it. I'm sort of in danger of sounding like Michael, but I wasn't a bad singer. But I had been trained when I was a kid. I was trained as a soprano, you know, until my voice broke. Then after that, I developed quite a good tenor voice. In fact, my first job in London was in the chorus of the Palladium singing. So it wasn't a bad voice. So singing would not have embarrassed me. But I didn't like the song, and it wasn't in my key, and I couldn't make anything of it. I couldn't really sing it. It wasn't my kind of song. So I didn't love it, but I didn't mind it.
Excuses. I'm sure you were wonderful.
No, I wasn't. It was a funny serial, that. I didn't get on with the director. The director was Rex Tucker, and he didn't like me, and I didn't like him. And I don't know why, but we never hit it off. So I just know, I never felt I could get anything out of the character, and he didn't listen to anything I thought about it. So it was a difficult series to do. There were a lot of very good actors in The Gunfighter. It was really quite, it could have been very much better than it was. I think it was quite good anyway, but I think it could have been very much better. I don't think Rex was the right man to direct it. There you go.
Next question.
It's a question for Peter. Your character Stephen in Doctor Who is quite brash in it.
I know we had one stock and then we sold out. We got the guy's email address. We've literally had these in the last few days because we found it again.
It's expensive, Dad, unfortunately, because it's a very rare video.
59.99.
No,
Oder müssen wir jetzt alles abnehmen?
it's long out of pressure, unfortunately.
We have to check our list if we want this.
Yes, okay.
59 Helge, gell? 180 Mark, das weißt du, ja?
Ja, aber
I can see it around that corner. Yeah. I definitely saw photos. My wife got 7 years old. Yeah.
Side of the book on the side burn. This one here. Sound off the truck.
You've already recorded these, or do you just show them?
No, I produce them. I'm the mug in charge. Well, I am.
That's all one typo.
In a moment, but I promised Andy I'd make sure we are. And then starting at the end of the you need a good
I'll give you a flyer, actually, it's got my...
The only thing I haven't got is Red Dawn, and mail ordered it didn't come before I go, so I can't help you not bother buying it again. I mail ordered it, he said it should be in Marlamore. Could be at home, so I'm not going to bother buying it here until I've got Visual and checked it's come. Because I mail ordered it a few weeks ago, but they said it went out Thursday, so probably sort of came into the post. Oh, but left home Thursday, probably just came in the post yesterday or the day when I was. Couple of them. Just trying to get half, yeah, but half battery time that should be enough for the presentation. Just saw Paul Pennell coming here, so Paul Pennell. Yeah, the novel, right? Oh. I don't think that's all.
Theme music. It might have been from an album called Variations on the Theme, done about 10 years
Saying whilst you're not watching the stop at the same time. No problem.
Right, I gather the next item on the
I'm around until 5 or 6.
Well, other than that, I will give you a call and we'll have to go and have a drink.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what you do when you come
That video. That one is 1999.
You don't need it. No, you do, it's just I know it. Alright, you know we're doing a special deal on
I've already got them all.
Yeah, have you got the videos?
Yeah.
Right. Have you got the latest CD?
Yeah.
You bought it?
Yeah.
Have you bought that? This, you know, the
Yeah,
TV
I've
one
got,
of the two?
yeah, I've got that.
And you got the Boy Who
Yeah.
Kissed Have you got these documentaries?
Yeah.
Would you like some of these?
I've got most of about 10 years. I've got no stories straight from that.
Yeah, that's the trouble.
straight out said, I may have that shot as well.
He's zoomed into his phone.
Hi everybody, hope you're having a great time. And I'm really sorry that I can't be with you, but I'm involved in a new production. This is Adam. Say hello everybody. Hello. He hopes you're having a nice time as well, and we'll meet you soon.
Aww. Okay, just a quick announcement. Ryan! Hello, everybody.
Get all this great flash photography on now.
Right, welcome.
Thank you.
Straight into the questions, I suppose.
Fine.
How does the
Can
mic
you all
work?
see us?
The smoke will clear soon. Okay, so now, you both worked on...
We can't see any of you.
Isn't that a good scene?
Somebody put the fire out.
Okay, you both worked for Doctor Who in a time when press interest was extremely high, especially during like the location filming Planet of Fire. What memories do you have of dealing with the press?
Buying a lot of drinks. The press bought us a lot of drinks. Do you remember that?
Yeah, they do. Bits of it.
I don't know. They were there. They weren't offensive. They weren't threatening as far as I was concerned. I think John was a bit wary of them.
Do you remember that guy Alistair that we had?
Yes, I do.
I think he was from the Sun, but we managed...
Daily Star.
Daily Star. We managed to control him because
We did.
on the first night, he was obviously just there to take salacious photos of me, not Nicola, of course. And
Impossible.
He got had probably one drink too many and got quite friendly with a German lady who we nicknamed Pearl Harbor. And he popped in a storm but not Pearl Harbor. And we managed to take some photos of him and showed them him, and after that he was terribly well behaved.
Yeah.
So
we
play the press at their own game, that's what you do.
There were quite a lot of photos appeared in the paper of you and very little Nicola. What did you think of that at the time?
Didn't bother me two hoots really, because I mean I was on a beach and I was swimming. It seemed perfectly natural sort of clothing to be wearing, really. The thing that was weird was that I never seemed to get dressed afterwards, really. That was the, there I am in Poole in Dorset, dressed in very little more, and, filming all over England in various costumes and in studios, where you just thought, what am I still doing in a bikini? So that was the odd bit. And the fact that I'd started out in what I considered, wasn't my choice, but it was a pair of fairly sensible shoes for running around in rocks, and then it's like I got fractionally more, probably like a quarter of a square foot of clothing, and the heels on the shoes just kept getting higher, and I just thought that was a little strange as well.
That's something to do with Mr. Nathan Turner, I think.
No.
Okay, I mentioned Planet of Fire and the overseas filming. Is that a pleasant experience from an actor's point of view, or is it even harder work?
I think it's really hard work. I mean, you do.
Yeah.
The problem,
You've got to fight off a suntan. That's tough. That's really tough. Yeah.
It's a bit like my present job. You've got to remember, when you get off a plane, you've got a crew, and the crew are paid on a daily rate. So, for example, there was one year where I didn't have a day off in 4.5 months at one point because I had 3 crews working, and they are all on a daily rate, and you quite simply on the budget cannot afford a day off. And that's exactly the same as an actor. Actors are paid to get there, do the job, and get out.
You never get to see the
it's
place.
hard work. You never
That's
get to
the
see
strange thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't say I haven't really seen Lanzarote other than the little bits that we filmed on and your hotel room, which you see less of, probably. So you don't really get to enjoy the space that you're in, unless perhaps you're guesting in the show, you've only got one day's work, and it was easier for them to fly you out with everybody else. So you'd get to spend the week there. But
we
it's
worked
not
our
actually
butts
fun.
off, actually. I mean, I think that Nicola, Peter and I actually were all
We didn't
quite
have
ill
day
at the
off.
end of it, weren't we?
Yeah.
Because we were just so exhausted. The schedule had been so punishing. It was, a hard one.
So it's
Because
not
we were
glamorous.
leaving the hotel. The hotel's at least an hour and a half away from the nearest location, and some of the locations were 3 or 4 hours away. So we were leaving the hotel and it was still dark. And we'd had the makeup call before we left the hotel. So it was...
And we'd been in the Pig and Strumpet disco till 3.
Exactly. So it was like, get out of the disco at 3, makeup call 3:30.
So it's not as glamorous as it seems then.
Not at all. If you'd seen that disco, it wasn't.
Okay, Nicola, you must be about the only companion actress to have been lucky enough, or is it if it's luck, to work abroad twice? By the time you came to do the 2 Doctors, had you learnt anything from your previous experiences, or
No.
is it much the same?
No, it was. I think we were there for actually longer. It seemed like we were there for longer. But we didn't. I don't think we had a single day off. Whereas officially, I had a day off in Lanzarote, but it never happened because we spent the whole day doing press stuff. So the idea of actually having like 3/4 of a day off was never happened. But we actually filmed the whole time when we were in Seville. So and that was punishingly hot. I mean.
That I'd come out of RADA and I'd been an actor for 10 years, and I hadn't actually done what most people do, which is go travelling and do those things. I just started work, and I'd been lucky, and I'd worked a lot and earned a fair amount of money. So I did have some freedom, and that's why I went to the other side of the world, to Australia. But whilst I was in Australia, I continued to act, but I did teach. I had a part-time job as a lecturer in theatre studies. But I did continue to act quite a lot, so I still kept acting all the way through that. And then I came back to the UK when I was 35, and I thought that I would then, having done a zoology degree in Australia as well, I thought that I would then present natural history shows or combine that with doing some more acting or whatever. And suddenly, we had this programme with Steve Irwin, The 10 Deadliest Snakes in the World, and I directed that, and it was a massive success, and worldwide a huge success. And I suddenly became a producer, and I've just gone with it. I mean, presenting is a bit like acting, I suppose. I'll definitely go back to acting. I really miss it, and maybe in about 5 years' time, 10 years' time, or perhaps I'll do something else. I don't know.
Okay, I've got a question over here.
This is for Nicola. How did you feel about the way your character was written out of Doctor Who, and was it your decision?
Well, I loved the way it was written out. I know that not everybody did. The shape of it, in a way, was my decision in the sense that John did say to me, do you have any thoughts about how you'd like to be written out? And I came into the studio and saw Janet's last story when they were filming and sort of met everybody. And I thought it was really sad that you have all that time with the Doctor and all you get is a sort of handshake, ta-ra, I'll send you a postcard. I thought, well, what an anticlimax, you know, for something that should be, if you think about it, the most amazing event of your life. As an Earthling, 1 minute you're here, and the next minute you're travelling around the universe, you know, travelling in time. I thought, it deserves something bigger than that. So I said, I don't care what it is, but I really want to go with something dramatic. And I actually said, I want to go with a bang. And of course, I quoted that, and then the press were like, oh, go with a bang. So I was really pleased that it was an exceedingly dramatic scene, and that, you know, I got my head shaved, I get to change my voice, I get rescued by Brian Blessed because he blows my brains out. You know, I thought, marvellous, more of that, please. And then, of course, it had the sort of reverse effect in that everyone was like, but we love her, you killed her. You know? So, being chickens, the BBC put in this thing I didn't like, that, you know, it was all to do with the Matrix or whatever it was they were talking about. And I just thought that was wussy. You know, I just thought, I'm sorry, they would not have got married, they'd have killed each other. I just didn't believe that whole sort of, you know, they live happily ever after on planet Yrcanos. So I loved the actual the dramatic quality of having a mind transplant and getting my head blown up and all that stuff. That was good for me.
Mark,
Which was your favourite Doctor Who story that you were in?
My favourite one was my first one because I had more lines in it than any of the others. And that's how we as actors judge our parts. The point about that is that the less lines you have, the more difficult it is to be good. And there are all sorts of reasons for that. Not least that when you're in a studio, if you keep working, you're very warmed up. But if you just are in your dressing room, then you suddenly have to go in and do one scene. That is very, very difficult. It's much harder to play small parts than it is to play big parts in drama. So yeah, the more lines, the better. And I'm a bit of a freak about old vintage cars and things like that. And so I had quite a nice time driving that car around the lanes and practicing in it. So yeah, lovely.
Giving them what for. So I think the character would have, in a way, been less strong, because you're only allowed to be strong if you were an equal Time Lord or some kind of warrior. As an Earthling, you had to be feeble. So I think, in a way, the character would have been slightly more subdued.
If I'd been with Tom, I don't think I'd have lasted 2 minutes, would I? I think Tom's Doctor would have had a lot less patience with me than the young stripling Peter Davison's Doctor, who you could believe would want this sort of character in the TARDIS. I don't think you'd ever believe Tom would have wanted Turner in there.
Okay, I think that's all we've got time for, so if you'd like to put your hands together for Nicola Bryant and Mark Strickson. Thank you.
You were expecting Andrew Beach, weren't you? He's held up in traffic. This is not on. Who's switched the microphone on?
This is not on. This is not on. It is on. Hello.
And this is going to be it's quite fascinating, this one, because it's somebody said you fancy doing the carol service this afternoon. It's quite intrigued. I thought, oh, this is fascinating, because we've got two companions here from two distinct eras of the programme, and almost, I'd say, two diametric ends of the spectrum from where they came from, as wanting to become actresses in the first place. Now, Carol, what really inspired you to want to decide that the one thing you wanted to do in your life was probably the riskiest business of all, which was go into acting?
Well, when I decided to do it, I had no idea about the riskiness or anything else about it, because I was about 2 or 3. And I literally cannot remember a time when I didn't want to do it. And I suppose it all began a long time ago in the olden days, when my grandfather used to run a social club in Essex. And this was way in advance of its time, in as much as it had a full-scale theatre, and he got the most fantastic people to come and perform there. People like Gracie Fields, which only the oldies among you will know about, and Cyril Fletcher.
Who would have been the Doctor?
Oh, I mean, some quite big stars of the variety stage. And I used to go along. I don't know why I, as a 2-year-old, was going along to see these things, but I did. I used to go along, and I used to get up on stage and play around. And I was going to dance classes, even at that tender age, tap dancing and things. And these incredible stars used to make me go on with them and do little things with them. And I suppose I was bitten by that bug then. And at this time, in this social club, they had a stage one end, rather like this, and they had long wooden trestle tables, rather like the working men's clubs. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the working men's clubs. And these wooden trestle tables used to go lengthwise down from the stage. And they used to have me tap dancing up and down the trestle tables at the age of 2 and 3. And they used to sort of drop pennies for me to pick up. And I thought, that's a good idea. You enjoy yourself and you get paid for it. That's good. So I suppose that was what was inspired me to do it. But at that time, because I wasn't acting, I was dancing, singing.
So what point did it start to become
Serious.
serious?
When I was 8.
Oh, right.
I did my first film when I was 8. And I really, really, really liked that. I mean, yeah, being on stage was great. Being in front of the cameras was even better. And then I did it really seriously. I decided to leave school when I was 15 and go into the business professionally full-time.
So were your parents really 100% behind this, or was it a question of, go become a solicitor's clerk or something like that?
Oh, no. No, my mum was behind me, and my dad was not. He was terrified about the whole business. He didn't like the idea of me zipping off, as I did, as you did in those days. I mean, at 15, I was touring Britain. I was going from one end being Scotland to the other end being Torquay, it was Devon, whatever. Didn't go to Ireland, but Wales, England, Scotland. I was doing that on my own at 15.
I mean, was it seen as a noble profession for a young lady to go
Oh, no.
Just thinking about where you were with the other sort of scandals going on at that time in the United Kingdom.
Well, yeah.
Tend to involve.
Wasn't exactly rogues and vagabonds still, but almost. I mean, one was still sort of being equated with ladies of ill repute. I mean, it was almost, you know, oh, you're a model, or you're an actress, you know. But no, it was difficult, and I had many nights crying myself to sleep. But then I thought, this is what you had to do. You suffer for your art. Good, I'm suffering, so I'm going to be an artist. You know, really, I was terrible romantic. Terrible.
Did you see yourself as wanting to emulate a particular role model? You said, I want to be like her. I want to be Sophia Loren. I want to be.
Well, who was around at the time that I really would rather have liked to play the same sort of parts? I suppose Claire Bloom. Well, of course, Judi Dench, fantastic. I mean, I'd love to do the things that she does, but I had my own little world, really. I just wanted to do it, whatever it might be, whether it was theatre or film or television, and do anything. I mean, I was so stage-struck. I mean, I used to love auditions. Well, I mean, who in their right mind loves auditions? I mean, just so I could be on the stage in front of you lot, you know, or in front of people, any people. I mean, just, you know, anything. I'm more choosy now.